Hello everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of The County Seat. I'm your host, Chad Booth. You know, in 2012, part of the big national debate was green energy versus traditional energy of oil and coal base. But it seems like from that debate, they are never going to get along. However, today, out in Utah's West Desert, coal-fired electricity and infrastructure is working hand in hand with the newly developed green energy to provide consistent, reliable energy, ecologically conscientious power to millions of customers. How do they do it? Well, that will be our topic of discussion today. We will start with a little background on Utah's green energy industry from Maria Rossi.
Today in Utah's West Desert, the winds of change are blowing, and this wind farm is capturing that air and turning it into power that will brighten the future.
Beaver County has more renewable energy resources than anywhere in the world.
We have the wind, we have the geothermal, and we have the solar. We're kind of proud of the fact that we are being recognized as a county that can develop green resources.
Who would have known that so much energy potential could be found among the vast open spaces of Millard and Beaver counties? Today, within a 50-mile radius, you can find wind farms and geothermal plants pulling energy from the earth and sky. Working with a coal-fired power plant and an existing infrastructure to create a network of power production that feeds our homes both near and far. The transmission lines are part of the InterMountain Power project, which both produces and distributes the power.
Because we're such a large transmission component in our company, we afford opportunities for others in the area that would like to develop their resources, such as Magnum and First Wind, an opportunity to access markets out in California through our project.
And the energy potential doesn't end there. There are also projects to bring solar, biomass, and natural gas storage to the area.
The infrastructure is basically there. We just got to get the projects up and going, and I think we can get the energy transferred to California or wherever it needs to go.
The wind doesn't always blow, and the sun doesn't always shine, so there is still a need for coal. That's the advantage of having a number of energy sources contributing and having the ability to switch to a consistent source, like coal-fired power, so the lights will always come on. And while power flows from rural Utah to one of the most populated areas of the country, perhaps the area's most valuable resource isn't exported.
A project like IPP has actually provided a lot of stability in the community of Delta and the surrounding cities because we bring families out there that work full-time for wages that are comparable to any that you find along the Wasatch Front, and they're able to raise their children there and do part-time farming and the other things that are contemporary with rural lifestyle. And so it's a very stabilizing influence that we have in those rural communities.
So while the national debate is focused on coal versus renewables, the sentiment in Beaver and Millard counties is use both. For the county seat, I'm Maria Rossi.
Thank you for that report from Maria Rossi, a new contributor to our show. We will be back with County Seat here in just a minute. We will be discussing the marriage and the components that make this work between coal and delivery and the alternative energy that's developing out in the West Desert. We'll be right back after this break.
The State of Utah School and Institutional Trust Lands Administration. SITLA manages 3.5 million acres of Utah lands with the express purpose of furthering the education of Utah students while promoting local industry, oil and gas, even residential development, all at the same time. Through the careful use of trust lands, we distributed more than $22 million to Utah schools last year. The State of Utah School and Institutional Trust Lands Administration, building the state's permanent school fund.
Have you ever wanted to go on a vacation to Mars? What about a visit to the Old West? Impossible, right? Well, forget what you think is real. In southern Utah's Kane County, other worlds are just an ATV ride away. The Old West lives on in every sunset. From the downtown streets of Little Hollywood to the vistas that have inspired the world. Never find yourself closer to home and yet farther than you've ever been. Southern Utah's Kane County, where anywhere is possible.
I think renewable energy and wind farms is a good way to go. We have a lot of land here to do that with, and the opportunity will grow as time goes on.
If a person wants to work in Beaver County right now, they can find a job.
I can't think of a better legacy that I could have left for my town.
What do you picture when you hear Rich County, Utah? Bear Lake adventure, snowmobile action, pristine skiing, spectacular solitude. Well, if that isn't what first came to mind, then you just don't know Rich County. The Bear Lake Monster Polar Plunge, snowmobiling Monte Cristo, ice fishing Bear Lake, skiing the backcountry, fishing at the Cisco Disco. Come and find out what you never knew you were missing. Rich County, Utah.
Welcome back to the county seat. Our topic today is energy in the West Desert. Joining us for this conversation is Jim Hewlett from the InterMountain Power Project, Tiffany James, who is the Vice President of Development for Magnum Energy. We'll want to find out a little bit about your company, and the Commissioner from Millard County, Darren Smith. We spent all this time separating coal and petroleum-based energy from alternative clean energy, and it's like the two cannot exist in the same universe. But actually, IPP is a very important component of getting these other energies online. Is that not the case, Jim?
Well, Utah is a coal-friendly state, and we enjoy a lot of natural resources here in Utah that makes it in our interest, our economic best interest, to monetize those, to mine them and to consume them. And that is what we have done at IPP. We regard ourselves as a very large electric manufacturing plant, using coal principally as the fuel and the impetus to generate. We have purchasers in our project that do have pressures from their local communities to expand their generating portfolios to include cleaner burning or cleaner generating types of energy, such as wind and solar. And so we're seeing them branch out and becoming less and less critically dependent on IPP.
Physically on the line, it's your transmission capabilities that IPP has of actually delivering the electricity to market that becomes the key part in making these other energies work.
Yeah, essentially that's what it means. It means a generator A or utility A that may have some energy that they would like to sell to utility B or user B. They can utilize the transmission system and the switchyard within the InterMountain Power Project to facilitate that transaction.
Infrastructure is something that we talked about in the story, and Darren, this you don't feel is really right quite yet where it needs to be as far as that goes.
Well, a lot of these projects that have come into our county, when they come in, they provide a lot of infrastructure. You know, it really benefits our whole community, but in a rural area, you still have issues about having those kind of things available to you, you know. We have electricity, but out in the area where I live, we don't have a lot of, you know, there's a lot of folks who still aren't on natural gas. They don't have natural gas in their homes. When a project comes in, then you're able to develop an area and provide them with, you know, all of the utilities per se, but there's a lot of areas where we have issues with infrastructure in our rural areas. And
is that part of it, is that you've got these projects that could come, but the infrastructure is not quite there to handle it yet?
Yes, it is. You know, we have a few industries that come and look at our area and they say, well, you don't have natural gas out here, but that might be where the mining, you know, the material is to mine. We have a potash project right now that's below Delta that's being developed, but there's not a lot of infrastructure for the process that they will need to go through, so it's very expensive for them to pay to run, you know, the power and the gas and rail and things like that. There are areas in our, you know, in a rural county where those things are just not available, and it's very expensive to get them there, and quite a burden on a project that's probably a viable project. If, you know, they could get up and going, they would employ people and add a great tax base, and provide good jobs, but there are a lot of challenges with infrastructure.
That's where we've actually, Magnum Energy has been really fortunate. The location of our project is just south across the street from InterMountain Power Plant. And so while our project is very capital intensive and it does require a lot of utilities, we're able to work with IPP and IPA to use the rail, utilize their existing electrical load to provide some of those essential resources, and that makes our project more viable.
I think it would be wise to just take a minute and really talk about Magnum as because the critics of alternative power as being part of the long-term energy solution is their unreliability. Solar gets a cloudy day, electricity drops off if the wind isn't blowing all the time, as we alluded to in the story. But Magnum, along with even IPP, is really targeting at filling in those voids and making it more consistent. How do you do that?
Very much so. It's about energy storage, and increasingly there is this incompatibility between renewables and traditional resources and getting them to market. And energy storage is becoming more and more important as that, as you said, kind of piece that fills in the gap. And our project's very unique because it's the only large-scale energy storage facility that can be developed in the West. It's a salt dome that exists beneath the surface, about 3,000 feet. We can put in caverns that can store natural gas liquids like propane and butane, and compressed air energy storage, which is when you take off-peak wind power or solar power and you compress it and you turn it into air and put it in these caverns to be used at a later date. And so energy storage is really important because it basically provides you a stockpile that you can combine with traditional resources just across the street. So as peak loads, demand increases, you can draw from those stores and fill in those gaps.
This is all really, a very interesting concept, and coal has been a baseline power system, and as I understand, it's a little hard for it to very quickly respond to if all of a sudden there's a demand and the wind just dies down suddenly. It's not like, okay, just throw a few more chunks of coal in the boiler and it's up. Is that where Magnum might come in? Is that they might help fill that load until the coal can come up to speed, or?
Probably not with the coal, but for the input that we receive from, say, Milford Wind, that does fluctuate. And so if Milford is able to utilize Magnum's resources, that when they are generating, they can inject compressed air into the ground, then they can release that and generate electricity from it when they need to offset the downtimes in that farm production.
We're going to take a quick break from the county seat. We'll rejoin. We will talk about some of the other resources and assets that this kind of collaboration between traditional power and alternative power has in the communities of the West Desert. We'll be back with the county seat after this quick commercial break.
How would you spend an extra day in Utah Valley? Stay one more day. Visit utahvalley.com to make reservations. Utah Valley. Bring everyone together.
Industry is the symbol of Utah. Beauty is what makes it unique. Nowhere else are these two qualities exemplified, like in Uinta County. Oil and gas extraction, pioneer history, the spirit of hard work and integrity that feed our state. Built in the middle of the most spectacular backdrop in the West. Isn't it time you found the balance you've been looking for? Uinta County, Utah, where industry meets inspiration.
Unlimited opportunity for adventure. It's all about knowing where to look. ATV adventures, rock crawling events, art festivals, and wildlife events. The opportunities are limitless. Pick your adventure in Miller County.
Whatever your meeting needs may be, Sevier County is perfect. The brand new fairgrounds facility includes a large meeting hall, breakout rooms, and a perfect kitchen facility to feed just a few or hundreds. The county also boasts the Sevier Valley Center on the campus of Snow College Richfield. This facility includes an arena and numerous breakout rooms that can be used for any type of meeting, conference, or event. When planning your next meeting or conference, consider placing it in the center of it all, Sevier County.
Welcome back to the county seat. Our topic today has been energy in the West Desert. We've been joined by a very diverse panel to talk about things. Coal is still part of a mix, at least for the foreseeable future, as being able to obtain energy independence. And isn't that really what all of this is about? Should our goal not be energy independence by using all the resources at our command?
I think that's very important. I think that we need to remember that each one of the resources that we have available to us in Utah is very fortunate that they do have all of the key components. We have coal, we have natural gas, we have wind, we have geothermal. And so it's very important to remember that having that diverse mix not only provides us independence, but it provides us sustained independence through time. And energy storage, having this unique resource that we have, where you can store anywhere from 50 million barrels to 200 million barrels or up to a TCF of natural gas in the project that we're developing, that's important as well because you always have a warehouse, and it's a warehouse that's centrally located inland, and so it can be used by Utahns, it can be used by the entire West. So we're very fortunate.
You make some good points here with regard to that, and sometimes our memories become a little shortened. The genesis of IPP and the reason that it came about was really driven from the 70s, where many people don't remember the gas lines when OPEC was created, and it constricted the amount of oil flow to the United States. It caught Southern California off guard, and they said, never again are we going to be dependent upon a foreign energy source. They came interior, they came to Utah and said, you have an abundant supply of coal, we want to take advantage of that. IPP was formed.
Well, then that's obviously points to the fact that coal still needs to be part of a broader mix, and that maybe we should be looking at, the auto industry is on what they call CAFE standards, corporate average fuel economy. Yeah. Maybe we should be looking at energy the same way and using a blend and give coal a little bit of a break.
Well, most definitely, and I think it's really important that we realize that it's positive. It's not necessarily an environmental issue. It's a good thing.
Coal has been a standard in electrical generation for this country for many, many years. Well over half of the nation's energy has been generated from coal. We see that on quite a decline now, and coal being supplanted by natural gas, which is a cleaner burning fuel. The InterMountain plant is relatively new technology, and it is very clean. In fact, it sets industry standards both in low emissions and operating statistics. And our 480 roughly employees at IPP translate through a multiplier effect that's used in standard economic models to produce some 4,500 jobs within the state of Utah. That's very key and germane in today's economy, where jobs are the key issue.
Well, we'll continue this conversation right after this quick commercial break. Stay with us here on the County Seat.
If you ever dreamt of running through an old west town, searching for outlaws, hiding behind the stable, or inside the old church with your 6-shooter by your side, well, your dreams have come true. Castlegate Town Shooting Range is the most detailed, most realistic, and outright most fun shooting range you've ever seen. The North Springs Shooting Range.
$15, $14, $13, $12, $11, $10, $9. We have ignition sequence start. Engines on. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Launch commit. Liftoff. We have liftoff. 3 minutes past the hour.
So what brings you to St. George?
Business meeting.
Staying long?
Just here for the day. Quick in and out. On second thought. Holy.
We'd like to invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy your 45-minute flight to Salt Lake.
I should have booked a weekend.
Almost 45% of the oil produced in Utah, 7.8 million barrels, comes from Duchesne County. That oil feeds our state economy, provides job growth, and supports local business. Here in Duchesne County, we're working to make Utah an economic, cultural, and technological leader. Whether you're here for business or pleasure, Duchesne County will welcome you with open arms and invite you to explore all the beauty of the Uinta Mountains. Duchesne County, close enough for business, far enough to get away.
Welcome back to the county seat. Our conversation today has been on energy in the West Desert. We're looking at, everything's on the table as it must be in this day and age. We were talking about some of the problems in the break that coal-fired energy has, and the fact that the situations that exist in the West are not the same in the East, but that has a problem. Would you explain that a little bit, Jim?
Well, some of the plants in the Midwest and the East are somewhat antiquated. They're older plants, they're older technology. They tend to pollute more. They have come under very close scrutiny by the EPA, and most all of them have been regulated, and new technology, principally selective catalytic reduction technology, has been imposed upon them so that they can operate in a cleaner fashion. Because they're old and they're amortized, the owners or the generators, the principals in those projects, must decide whether or not that's a good investment for them. We see a lot of them closing down. But we also see the EPA coming out to the west, and they take plants like IPP that's relatively new. We have a lot of clean technology that we've implemented in our project that's fairly recent, and it just burns coal more efficiently and more cleanly. We also treat our fuel before we consume it, and that's another step that helps it burn even cleaner. But it's a one-size-fits-all mentality for the EPA, and so the same rules that they apply on older plants in the East, when they apply that on plants like IPP, you get a high cost of investment, the same as you do on old antiquated plants, but at the same time, it doesn't produce as much of an immediate benefit. And so it doesn't clean us up that much because we're already pretty clean.
Pretty clean.
Yeah. So it's an onerous kind of imposition on us, and it makes us step back and say, where are we going from here? Where should our investment be to protect the generation and the costs of generation for our purchasers?
And cost really is a big part of it, isn't it?
Cost is a huge part, and to just take Jim's point a little further, that regulatory environment that exists with the EPA, it also exists in other agencies that permit projects like a new greenfield project, which ours is. It's a new development. These regulatory requirements have very strict environmental studies that you have to do and environmental compliance measures, which is fine because I think all of the industry right now in oil and gas and energy, they do want to responsibly develop, but it takes a long time to get these projects online. It takes a long time to be able to go through all of the steps to be able to exploit some of the more renewable or alternative resources that would augment IPP as it moves forward.
Now, I touched upon this earlier in the last break. In the auto industry, they knew they couldn't get the kind of mileage out of the bigger trucks that are necessary to pull trailers and things like that. So they implemented corporate average fuel economy standards, which means that you set a broad goal that you can basically apply credits back and forth between the more efficient cars and the less fuel efficient cars to get an average. Wouldn't something like that with all this alternative energy really be a more feasible way to keep costs of energy down and help us become more energy dependent in an area like the West Desert of Utah?
Well, I think it would be. I think a progressive utility will look at a number of generating assets in its portfolio going forward. Whether they add them today or 5 or 10 years from now, they've got to look forward. We, in our project, have 15 years left on our contracts. We are looking today to renew those contracts, which will go out essentially another 50 years to 2077, and we will have and be brought to bear all of the wonderful assets that we have currently existing in our project.
Tiffany, your thought on that?
In terms of kind of renewable energy credits and banking and whatnot, I think that there is a market for that, and I think that it's growing right now. I think California has some sorts of standards, and to Jim's point, companies, large-scale utilities, will start to utilize more of their portfolio to meet those standards. The same thing is with our company; we can also issue those types of credit.
I still think we need to take a moment and address the impact that has in a local community, because 4,500 jobs on the ground is a pretty big number. Magnum, you guys are projected
Hopefully 84 in the next 5 to 10 years.
All right, a guy sitting in Holiday, Utah, in the Salt Lake Valley would see a job, 84 new primary breadwinning jobs, and go, yeah, big deal. When you look at that down in Fillmore, how do you respond to 84 jobs?
Well, 84 jobs would be huge. 10 or 20 jobs are huge in a small rural community, and they have quite an impact, on the other businesses and the folks who live there. There are a lot of, once you have the infrastructure, you support each other, and the more people that we have that work there spend their dollars at home, and so then our businesses thrive. That we have. Not only do entities, projects like IPP and Magnum and First Wind, they hire people, but they also provide a huge tax base for the county, for our schools, to provide infrastructure for our schools, and for our roads and everything that a county does. A lot of these projects are built on SITLA parcels, and so the state of Utah, the state school fund, gets a lot of revenue from these projects, and I think that any time we can develop the natural resources that we have in the state of Utah, that there's a huge economic, social, they're just huge projects, and there's a huge benefit. My association with all of the projects in our county, that these folks are great people, they're environmentally friendly, socially they're involved in our communities and support our youth and everything we do. So I appreciate their efforts and wanting to develop the natural resources that we have, and anytime we do, that's when we create wealth, is by developing the natural resources that we have.
Our time has run out for the show, and the conversation still goes on. I think we're going to tape one more segment, and if you will join us on Tuesday online, you can join that conversation, and we'll try and wrap this up. Thank you for joining us here on the County Seat. Remember, we're changing times. We'll be starting at 9:30 on the 6th of January. And remember to get involved in local government. It is where your life really has, where it happens. And so we'll look for you next week. Our website, thecountyseat.tv. So long.